country.
Tonight, President Trump steadfast on his immigration enforcement strategy in Los Angeles and the mobilization of the military to respond to unrest. Critics, though, calling on the president to stand down after 6 straight days of protests.
It is a drastic and chaotic escalation and completely unnecessary.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to West Coast Wrap. I'm Alex Savage. We are less than an hour away now from the start of tonight's curfew in downtown Los Angeles. Let's take you there live. Protesters are gathered in this area tonight. These are live images showing us the crowd and obviously law enforcement on standby here. LA Mayor Karen Bass says the curfew between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. will remain in effect indefinitely. She's waiting to consider lifting it until she sees fewer arrests being made. 400 arrests and detentions have been made since the start of these demonstrations late last week. Now, the ongoing protests don't appear to be slowing the work of federal agents in L.A. Surveillance video today shows agents in unmarked gray vehicles boxing in a white car. In L.A.'s Boyle Heights neighborhood, you see officers getting out with guns drawn. The Department of Homeland Security says agents were going after someone who punched a Border Patrol officer during one of the recent demonstrations. Homeland Security investigators took the suspect into custody. A witness says those agents laughed when they were asked for their badge numbers. Today, cameras captured images of Marines and National Guard troops training at facilities across Southern California, including in Seal Beach, Los Alamitos, and several National Guard armories nearby. The president has authorized the deployment of a total of 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines. Major General Scott Sherman is overseeing the deployed personnel, and he insists the military will not be involved in making arrests.
So strictly for the protection of the federal personnel and the protection of the federal building, they're allowed to temporarily detain and wait for law enforcement to come and arrest them. They do not do any arrest. They are strictly there to detain, to wait for law enforcement to come and handle those demonstrators.
A federal judge in San Francisco has scheduled a hearing for tomorrow on a request from California Governor Gavin Newsom for a restraining order that would limit the role of the military to protecting federal property. Governor Newsom is accusing the president of overstepping his authority and supporting violence when it suits him. Tonight, President Trump appeared determined to stay on track with his plan.
If we didn't do what we did, would be burning to the ground. And that's not over yet. We are going to have law and order in our country.
Today, dozens of Southern California mayors joined with L.A. Mayor Karen Bass to criticize the president's actions in L.A.
The deployment of Marines on U.S. soil is an alarming escalation that undermines the values of democracy. As mayors across this region, we stand united in rejecting fear-based tactics that target immigrant communities and erode public trust.
Joining us now live tonight to offer some more insight on the ongoing tensions in Los Angeles and the legal fight over these protests is UCLA School of Law lecturer Benjamin Rad. Thank you so much for the time tonight, Benjamin. Let's talk about this hearing happening tomorrow. Obviously, an important case here in federal court in San Francisco. The judge will be considering this request from the state of California to limit the role of the military in responding to these immigration protests. What is District Judge Charles Breyer going to be considering when deciding whether to grant this request?
Well, one of the things to consider is looking at the section of the U.S. Code, Title 10, which is the statute that President Trump invoked to justify the deployment of Marines and of federalizing the National Guard. And whether or not the president has abided by the letter of the law in doing so, the statute clearly calls for measures that can be taken by the president in the event that federal forces are under attack or that local law enforcement cannot handle the situation, but that this action has to be conducted through the coordination of the governors of these states where such actions take place. So clearly, this coordination did not take place. That's at the heart of Governor Newsom's dispute with Trump. And then secondly, is this something that civilian law enforcement cannot handle? Does it require the use of the military to carry out these civilian policing tasks, these law enforcement tasks, which our federal law forbids and has been something that has been taboo now for going back to the Civil War. So these are the issues the judge will have to consider and see whether or not there's merit to President Trump's use of this statute for this case.
What does the federal law say on this question of whether the president actually has to consult with a governor before mobilizing a state's National Guard, or simply the president has to notify the governor that they have decided to mobilize those military service members?
Yeah, the language of the statute is not that particular. It says, and I'm sort of paraphrasing here, that that any deployment of federal forces has to be coordinated through the offices of the respective governors of those states. Now, what that means, what that entails, whether it means that the governors have to cooperate, whether it means they have any say in terms of how they're used or deployed, this is the fine language that has to be parsed tomorrow by the district court judge. And to better understand exactly what was the intent of this code, of this statute when it was drafted, was it meant for situations like this, or was it meant more for what we saw, let's say, during the Rodney King riots here in Los Angeles, where the mayors and the governors requested the additional support of the National Guard when it was obvious that the LAPD could not handle what was taking place. That's not what we have here. That's not what we've seen in the last few days. We've seen a situation where law enforcement locally can and has demonstrated is willing to handle what's taking place, and the mayor and other law enforcement officials, including the police commissioner and the LA County sheriff, have not called for support beyond what resources they have already.
And the U.S. Department of Justice, in a filing that was made just today, essentially argued that President Trump has the right to mobilize military service members to suppress a rebellion or the threat of one. So is the DOJ going to be able to make a strong enough case here to the judge that the situation in L.A. rises to the level of a rebellion? What evidence will the administration be putting forth here?
Most likely, they'll be looking at the evidence of those who have caused violence and property destruction, rioting, looting. We've seen images of burning Waymo vehicles and other vehicles in downtown LA as justification of a rebellion or as indication of a rebellion. But the question remains, and this is what Gavin Newsom mentioned in his address last night, is that these incidents happened when the use of federal troops, the use of the Guard, and specifically the way in which ICE agents, immigration and custom enforcement agents, were deployed, provoked the local citizens to behave in this way. In other words, but for the action of President Trump and his overreaching use of force, you would not be seeing the quote-unquote rebellious acts which the DOJ is using to justify that use of force. So in other words, you create the conditions for violence, then you justify the excessive use of force. That's basically what has to be considered tomorrow, and which came first.
Yeah. You know, we just showed images a moment ago, Professor, and they came out yesterday, but they were really striking. Service members in Southern California, members of the National Guard, sort of standing guard, if you will, as ICE agents were carrying out their operations. In that DOJ filing today, the federal government argues that the National Guard and the Marines are not engaged in law enforcement, but rather protecting law enforcement. How should we think about that potential distinction?
Well, the distinction is, are the ICE agents unable to perform their duties without the presence of the National Guard and the Marines there? Is it sufficient for the ICE agents to be supported by local law enforcement, specifically the LA County Sheriff and members of the LAPD? Because essentially that is all that you would need to carry out these raids that they've been conducting throughout the city. The question is that when you bring in the National Guard preemptively ahead of time, maybe because you want the other side to overreact, and then they do overreact, and you thereby justify the presence of the Guard and justify even expanding the use of the Guard, and in this case, the Marine Corps. So really what has to be considered is those images that you showed there, were those ICE agents able to carry out their duties with the support of local law enforcement, LAPD and LA County Sheriff, or did it escalate to a point where additional resources were needed? Governor Newsom says it never did escalate. Mayor Bass has said the same thing. The other local mayors have all said the same, have echoed that nowhere was it indicated or did it reveal that these officers of ICE, or these ICE agents, backed up by local officers, could not carry out their duties.
Professor, one final question. We're almost out of time here, but how quickly do you expect a ruling from the judge in this case after tomorrow's hearing?
Yeah, I mean, these things can happen very quickly when there's a sense of urgency and a sense of emergency, and then that's basically what we have here. a federalism dispute between the federal government and a state authority. So I imagine the judge will issue a ruling within 24 hours. All
right, great insight tonight. We appreciate your time. Benjamin Rad with UCLA. Great to have you on.
Thank you.
We are learning the White House is planning to send ICE tactical units to 5 Democratic-run cities, including Seattle. This move comes on the heels of yesterday's demonstration outside the Seattle Federal Building. The ICE tactical units are being deployed all across the country, and they were recently used in L.A. Other places they are headed include Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, and Northern Virginia. Anti-ICE demonstrators are planning to gather once again tonight in Seattle, this time at Cal Anderson Park. In the San Francisco Bay Area, the FBI has issued an arrest warrant for a woman accused of assaulting a federal agent during an ICE operation that happened in Concord yesterday. The FBI is offering a $25,000 reward for information leading to her identification and arrest. Authorities believe she also stole an agent's badge during that altercation. The assistant special agent in charge tells us the FBI has the authority to enforce immigration law.
With this current focus on immigration enforcement with the administration, it is something that we have begun participating in a bit more regularly than we have in the past.
The FBI says while it recognizes the First Amendment rights of protesters, anyone who becomes violent toward federal agents will be prosecuted. More than a dozen people have been arrested at anti-ICE demonstrations in Denver. Protesters there showing solidarity with demonstrators in L.A. began blocking streets in Denver at about 8 o'clock last night. Police say they gave crowds warnings that their actions were unlawful before they began making those arrests. Authorities also say they spotted some people throwing rocks and bottles at officers. The 18 people taken into custody are tied to a variety of investigations, including assault, graffiti, and obstruction of streets. And you can find extensive coverage on these ongoing immigration protests happening across the West and across the nation up at our website, westcoastwrap.com. Our online coverage there includes a look at some of the charges that protesters are now facing. In one case, a man has been accused of throwing a Molotov cocktail at law enforcement officers. Coming up tonight here on West Coast Wrap, investigators believe they are closing in on the Washington State father accused of killing his 3 daughters and then going on the run. Coming up, the tip that authorities think put them onto Travis Decker's trail.
And in weather, here's our live camera up in Seattle with partly cloudy skies. A current temperature of 67 degrees. We'll update the forecast coming up after the break.
It's about rewriting the DNA of college sports so athletes have ownership of their story.
Also coming up tonight, the former Arizona State athlete who shook up the world of college sports is speaking out. Tonight he shares his fight for college athletes who want to get paid. The intense manhunt in Washington State for a man suspected of killing his 3 young daughters has now entered its 2nd week. A man spotted by a hiker yesterday near a remote mountain lake was believed to be Travis Decker. Law enforcement officials say they're placing tactical teams in that area near Blewett Pass, right along Highway 97. At a news conference this afternoon, the Chelan County Sheriff asked the public to pass along any leads they might have, pledging to track him down.
Every single day Travis is out there, he's going to have to aim for perfection. He's not going to be able to make a mistake because all we need is one mistake and one day to go in our favor, and he's going to be in our custody.
Authorities found the girls' bodies back on June 2nd after Decker failed to return the girls to their mother as scheduled following a visitation. Decker is an Army veteran who has training in navigation, survival, and other skills. The Washington State man charged with firing an AR-style rifle at a sheriff's deputy and then going on the run appeared in court earlier today. After firing at the officer, authorities say Damian Madison, a 10-time convicted felon, made his way all the way to Nevada. That's where Las Vegas police were able to stop him during a pursuit using a device called a grappler. In court, Madison could be seen with his head in his hands, appearing to wipe his eyes, as the judge mentioned that he's facing life in prison. About 50 Thurston County deputies showed up to court to support their fellow officer.
If you think that no one got hurt, you don't get shot at and just come back normal. I don't care who you are, whether you're in law enforcement or military, member of the community. Anytime you've got rounds flying your way, you don't come out of that the same on the other side.
No bail was set during today's hearing. Madison's trial is set to begin later on this summer. Well, let's talk about our weather here in the West because temperatures climbed well above 100 in Phoenix earlier today. Here's a live look here at Phoenix. That's Sky Harbor Airport right there. And we are seeing a warm up here in Arizona and across the Southwest, and it is just getting started. Again, here in Phoenix today, the temperatures soared, and they could be seeing temperatures near 110 by this weekend. Let's bring in KTVU's chief meteorologist, Mark Tamayo, who is tracking those soaring temperatures and the conditions all across the West. Mark?
Hi there, Alex. Yeah, the heat will continue to build. In fact, we have this extreme heat watch for portions of Arizona, as you can see. This is not posted just yet. It's actually for Saturday, Sunday, and into Monday. You can see that temperature range, very dangerous, 106 to 114 degrees. So take a look at the projections here for Saturday, Sunday, and into Monday. So that's that real dangerous heat. It's already hot, but we'll continue to build onto that heat over the next few days. This was Phoenix today, 108 degrees. As you can see, lots of sunshine showing up in this camera. In San Francisco, they'd like to have all this fog in Phoenix. You can see San Francisco only 59 degrees with still some lingering fog into the afternoon hours. And then up in Seattle, showing you some clouds out there, temperature of 69 degrees up in the Seattle area. Right now, it's still 105 in Phoenix, 102 in Las Vegas, 82 in Reno, and Portland, Oregon reporting 71 degrees. We're checking out the satellite right now, and the most active weather, as you can see, approaching the Rockies out toward Denver. They're going to have the possibility of some thunderstorms for tomorrow, and some of those showers right now drifting into parts of New Mexico. And then out toward California, we have a typical June pattern out there with some low clouds and fog near the coast, and those clouds will try to push back into make somewhat of a push into some of the inland valleys for tonight. So here's the plan for tomorrow. A few clouds up in Seattle, thunderstorms for Denver, some fog for San Francisco and Los Angeles for the morning hours. And of course, we talked all about the heat out toward parts of Arizona. Some more forecast areas, as you can see here in Olympia, 69 degrees for Washington tomorrow. San Jose in the Bay Area, mid-70s. Palmdale in Southern California, 96. And Tucson, Arizona, 105 degrees for tomorrow. So once again, here is the best bet of the cloud cover, the showers and the thunderstorms showing up in the Denver forecast. But overall, quiet weather pattern from Seattle toward the Bay Area down toward Los Angeles as well. So here is the plan over the next 3 days. Seattle temperatures mainly in the 60s. San Francisco fog in the morning, becoming partly sunny. Southern California, a mild to warm forecast. And there we go with the 80s out toward Denver with the possibility of some thunderstorms. And then a string of triple digits that will continue for Phoenix Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and into Monday. So we'll continue to track this dangerous heat as a part of the forecast over the next several days.
Yeah, I know we will keep an eye on it. Okay, Mark, thank you. The musical visionary who created the signature sound of the Beach Boys has died.
And God only knows what I'd be without you.
The leader of the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson, died today at the age of 82. His family did not reveal a cause of death. Wilson formed the band in the early 1960s with his brothers in Southern California, and they turned out a series of smash hits, including God Only Knows, Surfin' USA, and Good Vibrations. The Beach Boys soared to stardom, becoming one of the most successful music groups in American history, with more than 100 million records sold worldwide. 35 of their songs reached the top 40, and Rolling Stone magazine ranked the band 12th on its list of greatest artists of all time. We talked earlier with TMZ's Charles Latiboudiere about what made Wilson such a talented musician.
What Brian Wilson did that was so revolutionary is that he used the studio as like another band member. He used the studio to enhance the instruments. They would play their instruments, and by the way, in Pet Sounds, he used all sorts of things in the studio that were not, traditional musical instruments, but would use them to make these sounds, which he then used the studio to mix it certain ways, to layer not only vocals, but to layer, traditional instruments and non-traditional sounds together.
However, following the Beach Boys' successful run in the 60s, Wilson struggled with mental illness and addiction and eventually had a falling out with the band. Early last year, Wilson was placed into a conservatorship after being diagnosed with dementia. Well, coming up tonight here on West Coast Rap, talk about a victory A former Arizona State athlete shares what motivated him to overhaul the business of college sports. Today marks 1 year until the 2026 FIFA World Cup gets underway in Mexico, Canada, and here in the U.S. The San Francisco Bay Area Host Committee today marked that milestone with a kickoff ceremony held at a youth soccer park in San Jose. The Bay Area will be hosting half a dozen matches. There will also be matches played in Inglewood in Southern California, as well as in Seattle. A former Arizona State athlete is opening up tonight about leading a lawsuit that is now changing the landscape of college sports. Fox 10's Steve Nielsen spoke with him about a settlement that's making it possible for college athletes to get paid millions.
It has his name on it. House v. NCAA, a legacy that he helped craft that means that college athletes can now make money from the colleges they play for years to come.
That's my reaction. Yes. Yes.
Jalen Strong applauds the settlement. The former ASU star receiver and Houston Texans draft pick says the House v. NCAA settlement is great news for athletes, even the high schoolers he coaches at AZ Compass Prep.
You talk to the high school players here and everything. Is there excitement about something like this happening?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
You know, in 2-3 years, these kids could be making millions of dollars.
House v. NCAA allows for billions in back damages to athletes. It means universities can now start paying athletes up to $20 million a year, a massive shift in the national college athletic landscape, brought on by Grant House, an Arizona State University swimmer.
We're both pretty speechless and just really excited for the future of college sports to finally have a path that we can all productively and successfully move down together.
In his first Arizona local news interview, I asked him about the legacy of starting a class action lawsuit for 400,000 student athletes.
You know, my role, I just wanted to step forward to have courage for college athletes. You know, it's not all just about NIL. It's about, rewriting the DNA of college sports so athletes have ownership of their story.
Strong won't see any money because of this settlement. He left ASU in 2014, but he said he knows what it will mean for everyone who will.
I've actually know what it's like to go play and then, have to go to McDonald's for dinner after you just had a 200-yard game, or, you never had your first steak at Mastro's until I was going into the draft, stuff like that.
House wants to take this moment and grow it, creating a platform called House of Impact.
I want to create this resource now that we have an answer to move forward that can help these athletes understand, be more educated.
You may not be done hearing his name. He's going to continue leading on. He says he's right now working hard to try to qualify for Team USA in the 2028 Olympics. Steve Nielsen, Fox 10 News.
And today, 8 female athletes filed an appeal of the landmark settlement, arguing they won't see their fair share of back pay in the agreement. According to ESPN, the appeal puts the NCAA's plan to pay former athletes on hold, but doesn't stop college teams from paying current athletes. That does it for West Coast Wrap. Have a great night.